Hey guys, what's up? So this week we had a fight this past weekend and we got a fight coming up this weekend, so we're gonna roll the recap and the breakdown into one. First we'll start by recapping UFC Fight Night, Swanson versus Ortega. If you missed it, it was a hell of a free card. We kicked things off. There were 6 fights on the main card, which is way too fucking many. These fights last till they don't start till 10 and then they're over at like 1 a.m. And they're like throwing commercials and everything in there since it's not a pay-per-view and they last for forever. But anyway, I was talking shit on these two, saying I didn't know who they were, and they ended up having an amazing fight. Lopez was on the Tuesday Night Contender Series. I didn't realize that. I'd seen a few of those, but I didn't see the one towards the end, so I must have missed him there. Excuse me. But especially the first round was really exciting, and they gave Lopez the nod. I personally thought that Albert Morales won, but I'm not a fucking judge, and I don't know, the judging. I did enough complaining about the judging in the last one, but I mean, I can't remember, but I think that all 3 judges gave it to him, so it's hard to argue unanimous decisions, but I personally didn't think he won. And hopefully for Morales, like, I don't know what kind of push he got before this. Like, Benito Lopez being on Tuesday Night Contender Series obviously got, like, some kind of push, like a promotional. Like, he had some value coming into this, like a little bit of stock. And Morales, that I know of, didn't. I could be wrong again there. Like I said, I didn't even know who these two were coming into this fight. But you hope that a guy like him goes out and picks up a win next and doesn't kind of fade off into the shadows after this, especially in a fight where he did so well. And I personally thought he pulled it off. Next was Eric Anders versus Marcus Perez. And Anders is the guy that I talked about in the last one who was the linebacker at Alabama in 2009, won a national title with him, blah, blah, blah. And he just kind of ran through Perez. Like, Perez had, like, little moments early on, but especially as the fight wore on, Anders just really started to pour it on him. And you got to see how strong Anders was. And he's got really good hips. And he just called out Lyoto Machida. And I think I just saw a headline that fight got approved. I couldn't believe it. Like, it's actually happening. Where it's going to happen, I can't remember if they have a date and location set for it, but I think it's going through. And that's a big step up in competition for Anders. But it's also a hard fight for Machida because I think he just got popped for some type of performance enhancer. So, whether we're going to see how Machida looks coming down off that. If he was relying on that performance enhancer at all, it'll show in this fight. But Machida's also been fighting for a long time, so he's going to be fighting a young, like, red-hot up-and-comer. And it's a tough fight for both guys. Like I said, I've mentioned this before, this new wave. This is where that new wave kind of hits, like, those guys who are kind of flirting with retirement almost, but they're not quite there. Like, Machida reminds me of one of those guys. Like, those guys that were so good, and they're still good, but are they going to be able to contend with guys who are climbing up through the ranks, who are going to be like those killers? Like these up-and-comers who are, I mean, just real animals. And you get this new style of fighting coming in, like, and sometimes the older guy wins that matchup. Like, sometimes, like Frankie Edgar versus Yair Rodriguez, Frankie just fucking shut that down, took him down, and beat his face in. That doesn't always happen, though. Like, sometimes these new guys... Like, honestly, Ortega and Swanson's a good example. Like, Swanson's been fighting for a long time, fought some of the best guys in the division, and Ortega went in and picked up a win. So this fight, Anders versus Machida, kind of reminds me of that in a way. Like, you got a guy who's obviously got a lot of promise in Anders coming up to fight a guy who's been around and fighting, I mean, for God knows how long. I don't even know when Lyoto's first fight was. I know he fought BJ Penn way back in the day. Anyway, that should be an interesting fight, and good test for Anders. Like, we're going to really get to see what he's made of. Next on the card was Holtzman versus Horcher. And by the way, I was wrong about most of these. I got the first 2 that I picked right, but just by dumb luck. Anders, I had a really good feeling about Anders, but this fight here, Horcher versus Holtzman, Horcher looked really good countering. Like, whenever Holtzman would get in the pocket, he would dot him up before Holtzman could get back out. So Holtzman had to really rely on taking him down and kind of grinding out a win. It was a good win, though. It was, I mean, he earned the decision. I didn't think there was any dispute or debate about who won the fight, but Horcher definitely had his moments. He just wasn't able to really capitalize on anything that he landed. So good win for Holtzman. I'm trying to keep these relatively short because, like I said, we're going to do the breakdown of the Lawler versus Desaunier card next. Next on the fight was Marlon Moraes versus Aljamain Sterling. And Moraes knocked him out in the first round. And I don't want to call it wasn't dumb. Like, it's not, I don't like to call anything in fighting dumb luck because these guys are drilling and preparing for this for months. But Moraes caught Sterling with a knee. And I think he was going for a high kick, and it was it just so happened that Sterling was shooting in, which is actually that's not bad timing on the takedown. Like if he was shooting in for a takedown when Moraes was throwing a high kick, it's not a bad idea. Except Moraes' knee caught him right on the fucking chin, and Sterling immediately went stiff. And that's a huge win for Moraes because he's coming off 2 split decisions. So to get a win like that is going to do wonders for his popularity, and it makes things a hell of a lot more interesting at 135 now because, like I said, Moraes made his name in World Series of Fighting. So for him to pick up a win like that in the UFC is going to be big, and 135 is stacked. I mean, we always talk about how good 155 is. In my opinion, 135 might be the second best division in the UFC. I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head who the top guys are. TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt, Dominic Cruz, Rafael Sunsao, Sterling, Moraes. Oh man, I can't think of. It's slipping my mind. But if you pull the rankings up, Thomas Almeida's in there. He's probably a little bit lower because I think he just lost his last fight. My point is, you could probably take anyone in that top 1 to 10 or 1 to 15, and you're gonna have a good fight on your hands. Like that, you can mix and match any of those guys, and it's going to give you potentially performance of the night or fight of the night potential. If you're into watching smaller guys fight, some guys aren't because they're fucking idiots. Next was Jason Knight and Gabriel Benitez, and Benitez looked really good in this fight. I really thought Knight was going to have the edge coming into this, and I was completely wrong. Benitez countered well. And to me, it looked like Jason Knight was trying to put on a performance, which is fine. You can do that if you're executing. To me, it looked like Jason Knight was trying too hard to be exciting, and it just blew up in his face. Benitez was really patient, calm, poised, and just picked Knight apart the whole fight. And that's a big win for Benitez because I'd seen him fight a couple times, but I don't really know who he is. And I'm sure a lot of people in the MMA community didn't know who he is, but they know who Knight is because of his fight against Chaz Skelly, and he came off a loss against Ricardo Lamas. But this a fight like this is big for Benitez because it should get his name out there a little bit, and it kind of showed you how good he really was. He looked phenomenal in that fight. I was really impressed with him. And finally, we ended the card with Swanson versus Ortega. Sorry, I have a cough. Ortega picked up a guillotine win in the second round. Was it the second? And he looked good on his feet. I thought that Cub, I thought if it stayed on the feet, he would completely outclass Ortega, and I was wrong. Ortega was very calm, marched him down against the fence. I think he shot a single on him, and then when you're a black belt of Ortega's caliber, these small openings are not so small, at least compared to other. For Ortega, any gap that you leave him, I'm talking a matter of inches. He's capitalizing on that instantly. And you have to realize, Cub Swanson is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And Ortega is just leaps and... I mean, he's better than Cub Swanson at jiu-jitsu. I mean, plain and simple, and it showed. And you have to understand that there are levels to the game, right? If you've never done jiu-jitsu before and you walked into a gym and rolled... Not even with a black belt. The levels in jiu-jitsu, for those of you who don't know, go from white to blue to purple to brown to black. And if you rolled with a honestly, at the gym that I'm at, like, they're so strict about promotions. If you rolled with a white belt with, like, a couple stripes on his belt, you'd probably feel like you were being grabbed by a fucking alien. Like, the way, like, you'd be helpless. Not, you might be able to do a few things with white belts, because they obviously have openings in their games. But when you, especially if you start moving up to, like, blue belts and purple belts and stuff like that, like, you're going to feel really out of place. And you're going to feel, like, suffocated. So imagine, like, I try to explain the levels to people, and a lot of people aren't aware of those gaps in talent. Like, I think it takes on average, like, 10 years to get your black belt is, like, the agreed upon rule. And if you've ever, for those of you who do practice jiu-jitsu, if you've ever rolled with a black belt, you know what that feels like. I mean, we have an instructor at our gym, and he probably weighs like 140 pounds, and I walk around at 220, and it is the most helpless feeling when you're rolling with him. Like, everything that you do is immediately shut down, and the only progress that you ever make is if he allows you to get into position to work something. And it's that, like, I can't explain it unless you've done it, kind of. Like, that feeling is like nothing you've ever felt before. It's like I said, it's like suffocating. And for Cub Swanson to be a black belt, and for Ortega to be able to pull off a submission like that against a high-level black belt, who knew it was coming, by the way. Like, you knew going into this that Ortega's specialty were submissions. For him to be able to pull that off against a guy that, at a black belt level, shows you how advanced his jiu-jitsu game is. It's phenomenal. And it's probably the best at 145, to be honest. I don't even think it's close. That's a bold statement, but I really don't think that there's anyone in the division that can hang with him on the ground. He's good off his back, too, so you got to watch out if you're a wrestler and you put him down there. Like, he's dangerous everywhere. And like I said, his striking looked really good. Like, he looked comfortable on the feet. He was very poised, very calm. And he pulled off a great win over a seasoned vet in Cub Swanson. And then this weekend, we have the fight night that's headlined by Lawler and Dos Anjos. And first up on that card is Glover Teixeira versus Misha Cirkunov. Misha. Anyway, Cirkunov was a guy that I was really excited about, and I think they almost lost a contract with him. And then he re-signed, or they were having like troubles figuring out how much he was gonna get paid, whether he was going to Bellator or something like that. But anyway, they must have came to terms, and Cirkunov just got knocked out by Ozdemir, which could happen to anyone if you've ever seen Ozdemir hit someone. He hits like a fucking Mack truck. And he's fighting. We're starting to see a lot of these fights, right? Like, where these guys who are like kind of coming up the ranks are starting to fight some of these older vets. And he's fighting Glover Teixeira, who is... I can't remember who Glover's last fight was. It might have been Gustafsson where he got knocked out. But I don't know if he has a fight in between that. But anyway, in that Gustafsson fight, Teixeira just kept beating uppercut after uppercut after uppercut. And it was like the same uppercut coming at him every single time. And to me, that's a bad sign, because it tells me that, like, you're probably aware that you might not be if you're in a fight and you're dazed and you're rocked or whatever, but you probably know that's coming, and your body just isn't listening to what your mind wants to do anymore. Like, you're not reacting correctly. And that's a lot of trouble if you start... So much of what you do as a fighter is instinctual. Like, I know it's like fighting is very cerebral. Like, you have to think, but your thinking translates into like these split-second decisions, and a lot of it is instinct. Like, that's why you drill so often. That's why you're always hitting bags and pads, and like, you're sharpening those reflexes. And when those start to go out the door, you can get in trouble, especially when you get into those upper... Well, it's weird because I say when you get into upper divisions when people have power, but heavyweights seem to come into their own at a later age. It's weird. Like, a lot of heavyweights are in their mid-30s. And elite heavyweights, too. Not like guys that are just hanging around. Like, guys who are world-class, like world championship level. So, but in my opinion, I'm pretty confident in Cirkunov in this fight. And if Teixeira wants to win, he has to be pretty crafty. Like, he has to stay out of the way of the power of Cirkunov. He has to mix up his strikes. He has to have good setups. Like, he's got to really get things going and outwit Cirkunov to pick up a win here. Next on the card is Mike Perry versus Platinum Mike Perry versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. And Honestly, I don't know if I could tell you off the top of my head, to be honest. If I've ever seen Ponzinibbio fight, I probably have and just didn't realize that was him that I'm watching. He's 25-3, he's ranked number 10. And this is a big step up in competition from Mike Perry. Especially, I think the last guy Mike Perry fought was on short notice, and he just knocked him the fuck out. Because Mike Perry does have a lot of power. I mean, like, when he hits you, there's a pretty fucking solid chance that you're going to go to sleep. But against a guy like Ponzinibbio, it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be able to land that shot. And for me, this whole fight boils down to, like, if Perry hits you, like, there's a very good chance he'd go to sleep. Like, he could end the fight at any time. But if he can't hit you, how is Perry going to be able to react when he can't rely on that power? And against a guy like Ponzinibbio, who's a top 10 welterweight and knows that like, is aware of that danger and probably has some pretty crafty ways about how to stay away from it. Like, how is Perry going to respond? He might surprise me. Like, to me, Perry's not this, like, technical guru or anything. Like, I'm not fascinated by his, like, striking. I just think he has a lot of power. But he could prove me wrong. I like Ponzinibbio in this fight. But this is a tough fight to pick because, like I said, Perry does have that power and he could end the fight at any given moment. But I think this is it's a tough test for him. I'll be very impressed if he can get through Ponzinibbio. And then, if Mike Perry can pull it off, you're looking at a fight between Darren Till and Mike Perry. Possibly. That'd be a hell of a fight. Two stand-up specialists. Well, in my opinion, Till's a little bit more of a specialist than Perry. But a guy with... I mean, you can't deny his striking. He's 11-1. He knocks people dead when he hits them. But I like Ponzinibbio in that fight, but don't be surprised if Perry fucking clips him. Next on the fight card is number 3 ranked Ricardo Lamas versus Josh Emmett. And this is a massive leap up in competition for Josh Emmett because Ricardo Lamas has fought the best of the best. He's got some really good wins. Did he beat Oliveira when Oliveira was fighting at 145? Let me check on that. I can't remember. Yeah, he did. He did. Just last year, November of 2016, it says. And then Lamas is also coming off a win against Jason Knight. Remember how I said in the last one that that's not really a bad loss for Jason Knight because Lamas has fought the best of the best. Lamas has losses to Max Holloway and Chad Mendez, I believe. And Emmett is coming off of a... I can never remember the name of the guy that Emmett just fought. Let me look it up. One sec. Felipe Arantes. Arantes? I think it's Arantes. And before that, I was actually at this fight against Desmond Green in Buffalo. And it's a fight that I personally thought Emmett won. But again, back to the judging thing, I'm pretty sure that Desmond Green was from New York. And I thought it was a pretty obvious decision. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a close fight, and you can't do too much complaining, blah, blah, blah. One of my least favorite things that people say is, you can't leave it in the hands of the judges. Well, why? You're dealing with these elite fighters who are literally relying on judges to make the calls for them when the fights don't get finished. Like, there's a good possibility that fights aren't always going to end because of a finish. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the reality of the fight game. Especially when you're dealing with two guys who are able to avoid getting finished. Like, this is their specialty. Oh, that's the stupidest fucking thing in the world. It bugs me because it costs guys like Emmett, in my opinion, like it cost him that fight. And you've got the crowd in Buffalo just fucking cheering for every little thing that Desmond Green did right. Like, anything that he did got amplified by like 10 times. And then you can't tell me that doesn't resonate with the judges unless they're not listening to it. But I fucking think they are. I think they can definitely hear that. And it's going to sway your opinion about what you think is going on. Like, crowds and like that environment is definitely going to... Like, if you see a guy get tagged with, like, a little right hand and the crowd doesn't cheer, like, you're like, all right, like, you realize that that's probably not a big shot. But if you got, like, your home crowd behind you and you hit them with that same right hand and people go, oh, yeah, and they start freaking out, like, it's going to sway your opinion, in my opinion. Anyway, Emmett is 12-1, and this is a big leap up in competition for him. And in fights like this, half the time I'm wrong. But I always pick the guy who has seen that top-tier talent. like Lamas has seen the Holloway and the Mendez and like the Charles Oliveira, that he's still a really good fighter. So I'm taking Lamas. I think this fight's probably going to go to a decision. You'll see Emmett kind of get picked apart a little bit. But it's a good... he could completely prove me wrong. But I really like Lamas in this fight. I'm pretty confident in the Serkinov fight, but this whole fight card's kind of full of toss-ups. And that's not to say that I know what's going to happen in all these fights, because I definitely fucking don't. I get more of these wrong than I get right. And finally, the card is headlined by Robbie Lawler and Rafael dos Anjos. And this is such an interesting fight because Rafael dos Anjos has 2 good wins at 170 now. I don't want to quite say he's on a tear yet, but he's looking good. Like, he beat Tarek Saffiedine, I believe it was, and then strangled Neil Magny. Like, just took him down and, like, made it look like Neil Magny didn't even belong in the octagon with him. And that's a tough thing to do when you're moving up weight. And Lawler's a guy who's been around the game for forever, never gets into a boring fight. He's fought the best of the best, held the belt, beat Johnny Hendricks, beat Rory McDonald. Lost the belt, unfortunately, to Woodley, but came back and got a good win over Cowboy Cerrone. I mean, this fight, this is another one. It's a toss-up. Like, it's a pick'em fight for me. I really don't know who's going to come out on top here. Because this, to me, like, this is the first time that you're going to see Dos Anjos. Neil Magny is a fucking animal. I don't want to discredit him at all. Like, he's really fucking good. But he's a completely different body than Robbie Lawler. Like, he's kind of tall. And, like, when Dos Anjos got in on the clinch on him, he just kind of overpowered. Like, when he gets in close to him, he kind of overpowers you. You know what I mean? And I don't know if Dos Anjos is going to be able to do that to Robbie. Because Robbie Lawler is built like a welterweight. Not that Magny isn't. Their builds are just different, is a better way to put it. And Lawler, both of these guys have been in wars. I mean, like, Dos Anjos against Tony Ferguson, I'm thinking of right off the top of my head. Lawler against, oh God, pick a name. Lawler has so many exciting fights, but Rory McDonald. This is a tough fucking fight to pick because, oh man, like I said, I think you're really going to see Dos Anjos get tested here. And I think I like Lawler in this fight, but I really don't know. Because this is a fight where, like I said, we're going to find out if Rafael dos Anjos really belongs here. And he looked good. He's looked good since he came up. But it's not that he belongs. I'm not a fan of weight cutting. I think it drains your body. I think it's terrible for you. So if this is where he feels comfortable fighting, and he's still fighting at an elite high level, he should continue to fight here. It's probably healthier for him. But what I'm saying is I guess a better way to phrase it is we're going to see if Rafael dos Anjos has the potential to win a world title at 170 pounds. And Robbie Lawler is the perfect guy to test it against, you know what I mean, who's been there. The thing helping Dos Anjos out, too, is Lawler's taken so much fucking damage over his career. And if Dos Anjos is able... Well, I want to say that Lawler's going to put on that early, like, storm. But Lawler's been a little bit more patient in some of the fights that we've seen him in recently. Like, he's willing to settle down and wait a little bit. Like, maybe he's realizing that... then he abandons it when he gets later in the fight. Like, he's still not afraid to get into a war with you. But it seems like he's kind of settled down a little bit, starting to pick his shots. I don't know. This is an interesting fight. I'm going to go... Like I said, I'm going to give the slight edge to Lawler. But we're really not going to... Like, in my opinion, this is a fight that you're really not going to know until you see it. Like, Dos Anjos is really going to get tested here. Like, this is a massive leap up in competition. And it's going to... We're going to get to see what Dos Anjos' future at 170 is going to look like. Whether he's going to be one of those gatekeeper kind of guys who kind of fends off. Because a win here, you have to be in title contention. Like, you're immediately thrust right into it. So this is a big fight for both. And for Robbie Lawler, a big fight to get back and potentially fight for the belt again. So, from bottom to top, I'm taking Serkinov, Ponzinibbio, Lamas, and Lawler. And like I said, I'm pretty confident in the Serkinov one. I could watch me be dead wrong on it, but I'm pretty confident in that one. The other ones, I'm actually pretty confident in Ponzinibbio's ability to win the fight too, but like I said, that power of parry is a game changer. Like, he could completely like change the outcome of that fight at any given moment. Like it just takes one punch to put you out, and if he lands that, it could completely change the outcome of a fight that Ponzinibbio might have been dominating. Lamas Emmett is a tough one. Like I'm basically taking Lamas because he's seen that high level experience, and he's probably felt what it's like to get like outclassed at a really high level, and he's probably made adjustments and bettered his game. Like he definitely has. You know, like when stuff like that happens, you can either run from it or you can learn from it. And I think that Lamas is one of those guys that learns. Might be a little bit too much for Emmett, but this is a big leap up in competition for Emmett, and if Emmett can pull it off, phenomenal win for him. It's immediately going to thrust him into... I mean, he's not going to get a title shot off this win, but start talking about another top 5 opponent, you know what I mean? And I'm taking Lawler over Dos Anjos just because of the mystery of Dos Anjos moving up to 170. It's not really a mystery, I guess. You know, he has 2 fights, but it's like, what's he going to look like against a world championship caliber guy? But that wraps up the recap and the breakdown. I'll probably do one of these for 219, which is coming up. It's the end of the year card. I think it's on the 30th. But that's headlined by Holly Holm and Cyborg. And then, who's the co-headliner? Oh, Habib, however you pronounce his first name. And Edson Barboza, which is going to be one of those classic, like, striker versus wrestler matchups. And you saw Khabib get tagged by Michael Johnson in his last fight. Was it his last? Is that the last time that Khabib's fought? I think it was. But he got tagged. And don't get me wrong, Michael Johnson's got some lightning fast hands and he's a really good striker, but he's not Barboza. So you're going to get to see what Khabib looks... I'm going to say something really unpopular here, but going undefeated at this high of a level is impressive, I guess, no matter who you're fighting, right? But if you look back through Khabib's like resume, his biggest win is Michael Johnson. Well, that's not... Rafael Dos Anjos was a big win. He ragdolled Rafael Dos Anjos. But he's not... Like, his resume to me isn't as impressive as Tony Ferguson's. So this is a big win for him to kind of go out there and, like, not really proving people wrong. Like, people know he's a fucking animal. Like, if he gets a hold of you, and if he gets a hold of Barboza, there's nothing Barboza's going to be able to do. But it's a big fight for him because he's going to get to go out and showcase his talent against a really top, high-level striker. So that fight card is stacked. It's that's the most interesting fight on the card to me. But I'll probably rule that out either next week or the week after. And yeah, I think what else is coming up? I think Ngannou got the title shot against Stipe. Whatever contract negotiations that Stipe and the UFC were working on must have got worked out. So that fight is on, as well as DC and Ozdemir. So I'll do one for that pay-per-view as well, and any of the fight nights in between. But that's it, guys. That'll wrap it up. Thanks for listening. Catch you later.